Hey everyone, my name is Camila. I'm the creator of Let's Talk Miami, and we are simplifying some of the politics behind some of Miami's biggest issues. Today we're talking about the environment, specifically water quality, and we're talking to Theo Quenee from Send from the Sea, a student-led nonprofit organization working on the conservation of our environment. So, Theo, I want to welcome you to the show and give you a chance to introduce yourself and send it for the sea.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. So we started Center for the Sea about 2 years ago now. So we're fairly fresh in this entire topic when it comes to Biscayne Bay. I mean, there's been organizations fighting for water quality and conservation for 20 plus years now, following up on scientists' recommendations. And it's like a very in-depth problem here in Miami, I think, and it strands back to when Miami was first started. I think Miami in general was built on marshlands and swamplands, and everything was kind of destroyed to make Miami the city we live in now. And for us younger people, it's a little bit hard to understand why this was done, right? And it really strands back to education, I think. And I think if a lot of the younger people like us, for example, are educated and know about the history of Miami, and then also the problems that are arising with what's going on with development and construction and septic tank leaks and all this stuff, we can really have a chance to fix it in the future. So really what we're trying to do with Center for the Sea is put out information, educate, the people that are in our generation, bring them up to speed with what's been going on for the last 25 years in our city.
Right. And I think this summer was kind of like an eye opener for most people, I think young and old, when we saw that Biscayne Bay fish kill. Honestly, I was shocked to see what was going on, and even more shocked when I found out there were reports that have been going on 3 years, like you say, that have been warning of such an event. And even I think even the scientific community was kind of shocked that it got to that point.
Yeah, it was crazy. I remember that week specifically in the summer, and it was just like, it was really hot. There were a lot of factors playing into it. Obviously it was the sewage and the pollution building up for years on end, killing off the seagrass beds and in the North Bay area. And eventually, with no seagrass, no oxygen, and mix that with high temperatures. I think in that specific week or the week prior to the fish kill, we had record temperatures, both air temperatures and water temperatures in the bay and in the ocean. So hotter water has less oxygen in it, and that also added to the fact that the oxygen depleted in the bay. So it's a mix of things. Locally there's things that can be done, and then also when you look at climate change as a whole topic, it deals with temperature, and this could be starting to happen in many other areas around the world.
Yeah, and so I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit more about the cause of that fish kill and what caused that the seagrass, that disappearance in the bay.
For sure. So the main underlying cause that a lot of research groups and scientists have figured out was kind of the pushover for the fish kill was nutrient runoff. So it's surplus of nutrients in the water coming from septic tanks, from fecal matter, So that was like the number one source of nutrients. Then obviously there's runoff from stormwater systems. Sediment runoff is mixed into that equation as well. And all that together kind of adds to a bad water quality, essentially. And seagrass is very, very, very delicate when it comes to to water quality. So if the water quality is not that good and it's been degrading for years on end, you mix sediment runoffs into that, which block out the sunlight from reaching the seagrass beds. And also, I think loose photo regulation is also, it's not the largest influencer in that, but we see videos of people running over seagrass beds and causing all these prop scars. And prop scars, if a seagrass bed gets many prop scars, it's it's hard for that seagrass bed to come back when you're mixing bad water quality into the equation. So in North Biscayne Bay, specifically around the Julia Tuttle Basin, there was a huge die-off in seagrass within the last 15 years. And that's a major source of oxygen for that area, for the marine life of that area. And it also filters water. So when you look at seagrass and mangroves and other, aquatic vegetation, it really plays a huge role in filtering our waters. It's a natural pool filter, if you think about it in that sense. Mangroves do a huge deal of trapping in pollution. We do a bunch of cleanups in mangrove forests around Coconut Grove, some of the barrier islands around Miami, and it's crazy to see the amount of plastic that gets locked into the mangroves and never makes it out. And it's a bad thing. It's a good thing, because it concentrates in the mangroves, so it allows groups like ours to kind of go into the mangroves and pull out all that garbage. But for the garbage that's not picked up, it quickly gets buried into the root system and the sediment and ends up, getting locked into there and almost fossilized in a way.
Wow, I didn't know that. I did read, coincidentally, yesterday there was an article in the New Republic that they were saying that between January of this year to March, there has been 3 times the amount of dead manatees compared to prior years. And they were talking about the same thing that you're saying, the septic tanks, the sewers, and this is all of Florida. So it's not just here in Miami-Dade that we're seeing this issue. And I wanted to get your take on, like, what do you think should be done politically? What's missing? We talked last year to Senator Pizzo about this issue, but I want to hear from you as an organization that you're working on this. Like, what do you feel like is missing?
General public education, I think, is a huge part of it. Without the community being up to date on what's going on in their backyard, or and their reach of things, it's hard to create change. I think, if a government's making a big change, they should really make sure the entire community is one, okay with it. 2, they understand why it's being done and why the money is being used for that. And 3, just they need to be educated on it. This topic is. When you say
educated, what do you mean? Like, what are you referring to?
I think there should be more campaigns, on the county level or even on city levels to educate the youth about it, to engage the youth about it, to engage businesses about it. I think like businesses and companies should be mandated to go through a certain level of training when it comes to like usage of products, right? Because a lot of the garbage, for example, that we're finding in the bay is single-use plastics, right? So it's like, and this is just the plastic end of things. That's not really even covering the water quality issue of like septic tanks and all that stuff. But for example, I think businesses, should be forced to kind of learn about the products they're using and understand that within the county, a lot of the products that they're using aren't recyclable. The only things that are recyclable in this county are, narrow neck items, which are like plastic bottles, shampoo bottles, laundry detergent containers, the little containers that food comes in, plastic containers that open up like clams, those aren't recyclable at all. Cups, plastic cups aren't recyclable at all. There's a long list of things that people think are recyclable. People think they can throw in the recycling bin, but don't actually get recycled when it gets to the waste management side. So that just covers the plastic pollution end of things. I think when we start talking about, septic tanks and nutrient runoff, it's definitely a harder thing to get across to people, because that's targeting homeowners.
Right.
And it's a hard thing to get through because it requires a lot of money to convert people from septic to sewer. I do know that the county is trying to get federal funding to help, convert a good amount of residents from septic to sewer. But there's definitely a priority list. I think people closest to the bay, closest to, harm from sea level rise or higher tides should definitely be switched before other people, more inland. But yeah, it's a hard thing to kind of discuss about, but I think it comes down to letting the community know through public campaigns, maybe collaborating with local celebrities and or sports teams to get a message across to people. I think social media needs to be used on a much higher scale in this sense. A lot of people, it's very black and white with social media. You can use it in a good way and make a big impact, or you can kind of just let it sit there and not really use it to your advantage in a good way and spread a good message across. So I think definitely working on a good public campaign to show people that our bay is going through something is an important thing.
Yeah, and one of the, I think, good things is that even in the COVID funding that's coming from the feds, there is a part where we can use for water infrastructure. So hopefully,
Yeah,
to transition some of those people in septic tanks, because quite honestly, it's impossible for most people to switch, to make that switch. But you guys actually got a victory last year with everything that was going on. Unfortunately, here, and I mean everywhere, we have to wait till crisis hits to get something done. But yeah, the city of Miami did pass some legislation to go after construction sites. So do you mind talking a little bit about that?
So I think, it was the work of many organizations together. I think it's really important to highlight the aspect of the community that we're a part of here. And I think it's about engaging the community and really getting them to act. And I think, through a different group of organizations, we're all able to target specific groups that we feel most connected to, for example. So for us, we're a student-led organization, so we have the best reach towards youth. I think we have the biggest connection towards younger generations, whether it's high school students, college students. We really, I think that's our forte, is we're able to talk to them on the same level. We're their age, they can understand us and we can understand them. But then it also comes to making people aware that just by taking a picture of something, they can make a big impact. It's all about keeping the city accountable for the things that are going on their streets. Just like if you see someone getting robbed or you see someone doing something weird on the street, you call the police, right? It's essentially the same thing. But people don't see the same urgency when it comes to the environment. And slowly but surely, I think that's starting to change. I think people are starting to realize when something's looking iffy.
People don't see they don't see the urgency. I feel like just people feel like, come on, there's nothing that they can do.
Yeah.
And that's what I really like about you guys, that you're like saying, no way, hey, you guys have a chance to make an impact.
Yeah. Like just this morning, we got a DM from a follower, and he was walking along the street right in front of Bayfront Park. And there's a lot of construction going there. It's in downtown. And he sent us a video of tons of sediment all over the road, like literally covering the road. Wow. And I forwarded that to the discharge email and continued to actually send it to some of the public works people to see if they could send an inspector there. And they were able to send someone out quite early in the morning. And then I was in that area after 8 o'clock, and I passed through there, and there was crazy amounts of sediment all over the road, and no sediment slugs or blocks like on the storm drains on that street. So whenever it's going to rain in the next coming days, or if they decide to hose down the street, all that stuff's going to go directly into the bay, and create one of those plumes that we've posted a couple times on our Instagram page to show people what it looks like, and what to look for when it comes to something that's harming the seagrass.
And when people actually send these complaints of these sediments, do you guys actually get response from the city? Like, is the city sending these inspectors and shutting down these construction sites?
Following up so there's a lot of like hard in between things. Like there's certain things that we're still learning about the whole process of it. I remember right in the beginning of it when they were starting to work on the legislation to pass the law or the ordinance to shut down the sites. I think along with other groups, we had brought up the idea of creating higher fines, right? And some of the local commissioners were saying that shutting down the site has a higher impact than fining because it's time is money. I think in construction, if they don't work for a full day, that's pushing them back on a lot of deadlines and permits and stuff, which, it does add up in the end of the day. But I think there should definitely be some sort of consequence when it comes to the site itself. If the workers that did whatever they did aren't educated on the facts, if they're just, if they're fired from the company or the construction site, or they're put on leave or something like that, next people that are doing their job might do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the city should make that construction site go through some sort of an educational period, and have all the workers sit down, make them understand what's going on, show them what to do if sediment does get on the street, and show them the correct process to clean it up. Because in the end of it, mistakes happen, accidents happen. Sometimes, things happen that we don't expect. And I think, people owning up to it and understanding they messed up is the biggest part. And then also having them know what to do if it happens again is the second biggest thing.
Right. Because right now what's happening is that if there is this runoff of sediments into the bay, what's happening is that this new legislation is shutting down these construction sites, but are they not giving them a fine? Is that what's happening?
So they get the fine. I think the fine's a very low amount. The fine amount has not changed since before. It's the same. I think I'm not sure on the amount, but I remember hearing it was somewhere in the hundreds of dollars, which is very low. Yeah, it's very low. It's nothing. But the good thing is that, there is the shutdown now. So like, basically if a site is caught and it's traced back to a construction site, police will go to the site, shut the site down, make sure all the workers are out until everything is cleaned up on the street, until proper sediment barriers are put in place, until everything is kind of like up to code essentially, and then they can resume working. So I feel like it's a good thing, because yes, they're being forced to stop, but then it could happen again at that point. So that's definitely something I think, and it has. We had a lot of steam moving forward with it in the summer months, because we were seeing it happen so much with the rain. And now that the whole winter went through, the hard thing is that I feel like the public kind of let it pass them. And now we're going to have to reintroduce it all over again when the rain starts coming.
Yeah.
So the good thing is we do have a platform of people that are kind of up to date. So it's going to be easier to start it back up.
Yeah. And also you guys have, I believe in the county, they passed the legislation on the fertilizer ordinance, right? Mm-hmm. That you can't fertilize during rainy season, because this is also shocking to me that this runoff into our storm drains, there's no filter. It just goes directly into the bay, which exactly. I think is crazy.
Yep. So that's one thing. There's some counties or some municipalities that have passed fertilizer ordinances, and they also have stormwater filters. I think City of Aventura has outfitted a good amount of their stormwater drains to have these filters on them that are at the street level. So the thing is, have you ever seen the giant trucks that drive around with the pumps, and they'll suck out? So basically they're hired by the city to clean these sewer systems or stormwater systems. And, that's after the fact that garbage gets into it. Yeah. So they're being hired to clean something that could be prevented.
Yeah.
Right. And that costs a lot of money. Those vacuum trucks cost a lot of money to operate. There's huge contracts within the city to hire groups of these trucks to go around and clean all this sewers or stormwater systems. if the city were to just put these filters everywhere, you know, and not everywhere, there's 28,000 stormwater inlets all over the city of Miami alone. That's a lot of stormwater inlets. Not all of them are located on the water. Not all of them lead into stormwaters that go into the bay. I think if the city were just to start implementing priorities, again, like we were talking about priorities, just like the septic systems, if they were just to convert the ones that are closest to the water, that are the most, you know, in line to have leaking, if they're just to convert all the storm water inlets that are closest to the water that have direct line to an outfall point, they'd be able to stop a lot of garbage from going into the bay. So it's just a matter of changing the maintenance stream. So if they do implement these stormwater filters at the street level, they just have to increase street sweeping, which ends up being cheaper long term than using these pump trucks.
Right.
So it would save the city money over a span of, I think, 5 years. There's this company called SOP Filters, they're locally based here in Miami, and they make these filters. And I've gone out with the owner a couple times to do some data collection on nutrient pollution. So the cool thing is that these stormwater filters also block out leaves from entering the system, the stormwater system. And leaves are a huge nutrient polluter. You know, if you think of Miami, yeah, there's so much information that I think, you know, it's really not known on a wide scale. For example, if Miami were completely barren, there were no buildings, no streets, no stormwater systems, the leaves from mainland or inland would never make it out to the bay, ever.
Right.
You know, they would be stuck on land, they would decompose on land and turn into nutrients on land, which would just help terrestrial trees to grow. But that's not how it's set up today. Today, all these leaves that fall during the you know, spring and fall months, they make their way into the water systems. They start to break down, and then that turns into fine particulates that just get swept out very easily into the bay, and that creates a lot of nutrient pollution.
So this is how I actually found you guys, was through the proposal from the Army Corps of Engineers to address the sea level rise and storm surges. So basically, they want to create it's one of the solutions that they're proposing, but it's this flood wall along our shorelines, and specifically the whole headline has been the flood wall that they want to make in Brickell, that has been coined as the Berlin Wall, which I think is hilarious. It's kind of crazy that anyone is thinking of putting up a wall in a waterfront property. So I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about that project and what has been your opinion on it, really.
So I remember seeing this headline in a group chat, and it came up, and I was like, okay, like, what is this? Like, I saw it online. I was like, this is pretty crazy. Why is this being proposed? And then basically the Army Corps of Engineers released a whole report, like I don't know how many 100-page report on this specific project. And in the report, it very clearly said that this construction will have like unchangeable or unfixable effects on the SAVs, the submerged aquatic vegetation of the bay, which is seagrass, mangroves, you know, benthic animals, marine animals in general. So it was going to do a lot of damage to the bay. And I'm like, reading through this thing, I'm like, okay, like, they're acknowledging this. Why are they still proposing this as a solution?
Right.
Like, why is it being done if it's going to have so much negative damage on the bay?
It's like you're giving me more problems than solutions.
Exactly. So, and I don't believe that many people knew about it. I asked some of my friends in Brickell that have, you know, their parents own apartments in Brickell, and I asked their parents, hey, like, are you guys aware of this proposal? And they're like, no. And they live there where the project was proposed to be done, and no one, like, not even the buildings knew about it. And that's just a crazy thing to say. Like, again, it comes back to letting the public know about what's going to be done. That wasn't done in that case. You know, again, this was a proposal, but proposals eventually end up becoming plans to be doing something in the city. And, you know, if a proposal gets through without being talked about, or you know, without people showing opinion for it, it'll just be done. You know, and that's where we saw an opportunity to kind of show people like, hey, this is going on. Like, you guys need to step up. And, you know, we did launch a petition. Whether the petition did something or didn't, I think it was just about getting people aware about, you know, plans that the Army Corps of Engineers had. And, you know, whether our petition had anything in like getting them to change the proposal to a more natural mitigation or not, I don't know. But they released a new, more living shoreline aspect proposal to it just after, showing a series of islands in front of Brickell that served as not only public spaces for people to use, but it also consisted of like a boardwalk system, mangrove barrier islands, which was a lot better for the bay because it's, in the end, it's more mangroves, it's more living shoreline, it's more space for people to use. In contrast to this wall that was going to completely separate people from the water.
The wall that they're proposing is between 1 to 13 feet. And I think in Brickell, it was going to be like about 10 feet high. So
yeah, and 50 feet out. So whatever the existing shoreline is right now in Brickell, the seawall there, they were going to push that 50 feet out into the water.
Wow.
Yeah.
So basically, if you were walking like through Brickell, you wouldn't be able to see the water.
No.
Yeah, no. It's crazy. And I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about what is this living shoreline? What does that mean? And how can this be better than that flood wall that they're proposing to protect people in the coastal areas from storm surges and that sea level rise?
So living shorelines are exactly kind of what they are, you know, what the word says. It's a shoreline that's not made of concrete. It's engineered to essentially be as natural as possible. So all of these spoil islands, I'm in Coconut Grove right now, but all these spoil islands that are in front of the marinas and stuff are man-made islands.
When you say spoil islands, what does that mean?
So when they dredged out the channels for boats to go through in the bay, they had a bunch of leftover sand. So they made these islands in front of the marinas as barriers. To create a calm environment for boats to kind of live in. These islands were made from the sediments that they dredged out from the channels. And then from then, they created a rock shoreline. They added soil to it, and they added natural, you know, native plant species such as mangroves and buttonwoods. Beforehand, it's funny because I've been doing a lot of research on the history of these islands. And they all used to be full of Australian pine. So Australian pine is an invasive species of tree. It can be found all over Virginia Key. It was once all over Key Biscayne. I'm not sure if you've ever been to Bill Baggs, the state park.
Yeah.
But if you look on Google Maps, they have a whole, right behind the lighthouse, there's a huge mangrove restoration area. Mm-hmm. So if you look on Google Maps, it's just mangroves now, but that used to be all Australian pine. And I think when Hurricane Andrew came through, it destroyed that entire area. All the Australian pine are invasive. They're not made to be here because they have very shallow root systems. So when a hurricane comes by or if there's high wind, these trees literally just topple over every time. So they're not made to withstand the natural forces that come through Florida often. Mangroves, on the other hand, are made to deal with that. They're made to withstand hurricanes, flooding. They hold the coastlines together and protect it from erosion because of their root systems. Their roots kind of just slowly inch into the ground, and they start locking together all the sediments and the sands, the rocks, and they essentially build a shoreline. And they can continue to build a shoreline for many, many years. So a living shoreline is a mixture between you know, obviously rocks, mangroves, seagrass, and it's something that native animals and marine life can live on.
From what I saw from the plants, I think it also looks a lot prettier.
Yeah, it's visually more
Yeah,
aesthetic. Yeah.
it's a lot prettier, and like you say, it does have the potential to protect people from storm surge, and even just thinking Brickell specifically during rainy season, it's like, I mean, just a couple of drops fall, and we're not even talking about storm surge or hurricanes, just a regular rainstorm. It becomes like the bay, basically.
Yeah, it's flooded. Yeah.
Yeah, so it makes you wonder, okay, why would you put a wall? You're basically kind of creating like a bowl effect. Like, where does this water drain out to?
They would need to update a lot of the stormwater infrastructure.
Mhm.
That's one thing that needs to be done. Also, is it needs to be rearranged, because now when the king tides come through in October and September, water comes in through the outfall. So this is the seawall, Brickell's on this side, the bay's on this side. Water comes into these outfalls and ends up coming up the pipes. So they need to be installing backflow preventers. So it's basically like a one-way valve. So when water comes out, it opens, and it stops water from coming in the other way. So that's one thing that they have to install. But that creates a lot of pressure on the actual existing seawall. So yeah, it's hard. It's definitely very complicated to deal with sea level rise and effects like that. It's something hard to think of, and there's a lot of engineering that goes into it. But the cool thing with living shorelines and mangroves is that in places all over the world, and specifically Asia and Indonesia, they just rely on strictly like mangroves to protect their shorelines. There was the tsunami that came by. I don't remember the specific date, but there was a tsunami that came by Indonesia. I think it was early 2000, and people living behind mangrove forests reported that the tsunami was broken apart before it even reached their homes on the coast because of the mangroves. And places that did not have mangroves completely got messed up by the wave because it made its way all the way through. So when it comes to storm surge and wind damage and wave action, these mangrove islands would do a huge deal in preventing wave energy from reaching the shoreline.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
It's like you're combating nature with nature, basically.
Exactly. I mean, it's designed to do that. If you look at, satellite images of places that have not been touched by development at all, it's the same that it's been for years on end. Mangroves are designed to deal with this type of wave energy and wind energy.
Right. Theo, thank you so much for all of this information that you're giving us. And I want to give you a chance to let people know how can they connect with you, connect with Senate for the Sea, how can they join some of the cleanups that you guys are hosting.
So you can follow us on our Instagram page. That's primarily our main point of contact when it comes to engaging with the community. We post all of our cleanup dates there. We post action alerts, opportunities for people to volunteer, educational content for people to learn about what's going on. So that's probably the single best point of contact. And then, we host cleanups twice a month, and we're starting to do a little bit more of a community engagement through sports. So we're trying to get more people out on the water, whether it's paddleboarding, kayaking, sailing, whatever it may be. And just getting people out and allowing them to enjoy the environment so that they can create a desire to protect it.
Right. So you guys follow Send It for the Sea at Send It For with the number 4, the sea. On Instagram, they have the best content on what's going on in our environment, and definitely join if you can some of the cleanups that they're hosting there. You can really see the plastic pollution that Theo was talking about earlier. And I think if you enjoy the environment you're in, you're going to love it and protect it. So thank you so much for your time, honestly.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and everyone else, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Have a great day.